So here's a proverb for you to try. If you heal the leg of a person, do not be surprised if they use it to run away. I want you to think for a minute and apply that to narcissism. So, welcome back to the never ending proverb series. I'm really enjoying thinking about this series now. Have really been focusing, as you can see, a lot on at what are traditionally African proverbs. So much wisdom in these proverbs that seem to understand narcissism so well. So, this particular proverb, if you heal the leg of a person, do not be surprised if they use it to run away. Let's take this one apart. I think some of you are already like, yeah, I'm on this one. So this is, as I said, it's an African proverb. So many of these are just so spot on. I'm struck as I've been reading so many of them recently, like, wow, these are so wise. They're often quite difficult to source to an individual, sometimes even to a country, but they're very on point. I almost find myself sort of a collector of these African proverbs at this point. And this particular proverb, it's the heartbreak of so many people who get into narcissistically abusive relationships. This idea, if you heal the leg of a person, don't be surprised if they run away. Now, as you know, I have talked repeatedly about the toxic fairy tale of the empath and the narcissist, and what happens when very empathic people and very narcissistic people get together. Basically, as too many of you know from firsthand experience, the empathic person exhausts themselves in their ill-fated attempts to love, rescue, enable, and help the narcissist. Everyone is given a bunch of bad advice as we grow up and a bunch of ridiculous fairy tales on love stories and how love stories are about rescuing someone and the happily ever after. And after, all of you know that these rescue love stories are basically a crock of you-know-what. But this kind of thinking, rescuing and love stories, has gotten so many people into terrible situations in which they really try to help the narcissistic person in their life. They listen to the narcissistic person's victimized rants. They give them endless supply. They learn to stop talking about themselves. They support the narcissistic person in their dreams. They give the narcissistic people second chances, third chances, 150th chances. And they always, always give the narcissistic folks the benefit of the doubt, all in this grand fantasy of rescuing them. But after you do all of that, one day, in many cases, the narcissistic person will either cheat or leave or end the relationship. And as much as I warn people about the harms of narcissism, I'm the first to acknowledge that a narcissistic person doesn't end up with this personality style out of nowhere, right? It's not like it's bad luck. Well, I guess it kind of is bad luck because many narcissistic people have really rough backstories. They did sometimes experience difficult childhoods that were characterized by anything from trauma to neglect to having one or two narcissistic parents to being subjected to lots of inconsistency. And it's believed that narcissism as a personality style really reflects an anxious and avoidant attachment style, which is not an easy way to live. None of it's easy. Sometimes narcissistic people didn't have all of that. Instead, they were just really spoiled, really overindulged as children, never were taught limits, or they were just the overindulged golden child, and they get really good in adulthood at shaping their story in a way that will manipulate other people and get them what they want. Now, keeping all of that in mind, it can be hard because a lot of people feel like, oh, I have to rescue this person. Now, this rescuing narrative tends to happen more often with the vulnerable narcissists. This is the type of narcissism that's characterized by lots of anxiety and sadness at times, social awkwardness, lots of neediness, lots of grievances, sullen victimhood, resentment, being pouty, being quietly rageful, being vindictive. These are folks who, unlike the grandiose narcissistic types or even the malignant narcissistic types, they tend to be more introverted and socially anxious. And as a result, they do not initially come off as charming or charismatic or confident, but rather, a vulnerable narcissist will often initially come off as quiet, perhaps even shy, and definitely not as sort of in your face, attention seeking. In the early days of any relationship with a vulnerable narcissistic person, they may quite often share sort of tales of woe, belief of how everyone has let them down, their parents, life, everyone they ever went to school with or ever knew, every teacher they ever had. They believe that no one sees their excellence, that they never got a lucky break. Now, if you fall for all of this sort of vulnerable narcissistic polemic or vulnerable narcissistic rant, it can be very tempting to want to rescue them, to want to save them. Vulnerable narcissistic people can almost turn into a sort of project for the empathic people who come into their lives. You may do everything from listen to them for endless hours, loan them your car, introduce them to someone who can help them get a job, loan them money, help them with their resume, tell them how great they are, offer to let them move in so they aren't sofa surfing. In essence, you try to rescue them. You try to right all of the wrongs that they tell you have happened in their life. And in many cases, not all, but many, once you give the narcissist sort of back their legs, as it were, they do finally get the job or a steady salary or whatever it is they needed. They may end up being done with you. I have seen it happen so many times. This isn't going to be that great love story in which the sullen, victimized person turns to you and thanks you for all you've done and then becomes bright and cheery, perhaps to become the sort of prince or princess, charming, and it's all happily ever after. That's Beauty and the Beast. That ain't real life. No, narcissism is a very parasitic style, and after kind of getting back on their feet, many may even feel that they can do better than you, which is a terrible thing to have thrown at you since you are the one who got them to this point. But they believe it, and they may trade on this new persona that you helped them create and take that and move on to what they believe are greener pastures. And when this happens, it can hurt. It can really, really hurt and play on all of those wounds, those core wounds like, I'm not good enough. At that point, after you healed their leg and they run away, it is easy to fall into self-blame, self-anger, and a sense that somehow you're the one who's foolish. No, you didn't do anything wrong. You were human. You were kind. And it becomes a painful but real life lesson that when dealing with narcissism, and I gotta tell you, a lot of these African proverbs understand narcissism better than most shrinks understand narcissism today. That once you heal whatever they were bothered by, whatever they thought they need when you met them, when you heal that proverbial leg for them, they are more likely to use that so-called healed leg to run away from you. Now, when a person is left, by a narcissist, when a narcissist leaves the relationship, it's easy to fall into the distorted and flawed thinking that the narcissistic person, that they're going to change for the next person, or it's easy to fall into the belief that of I am not enough. And that's why they left. Or now that they changed, they wanted something better than me. They haven't changed. They didn't change with you. They're not going to change for the next person. They're not going to change for the person after that. You know why? Because they can't. You are more than enough. And they didn't change, and they're not going to change. For narcissistic people, all relationships, all relationships are transactional, and the transaction largely benefits them. In their heads, if they were actually in touch with themselves, honestly, what they view it as is, hey, I was in a relationship with you, and that makes you lucky because you got to be with me, and you did stuff for me. Well, yeah, you did stuff for me because I deserve it. And guess what? You got to be in a relationship with me, and aren't you lucky? That's actually what goes through their little entitled brains. And then they'll say, and no, I'm kind of done with you because I got what I needed, so bye. It hurts. And because of this transactional nature of these relationships, there are lots of people who get into relationships with narcissists and who help the narcissist sort of heal. And by heal, I don't mean that you're getting them better, you're healing them from their narcissism. I mean that you take care of what they need, you take care of what they feel entitled to, you may pay bills or solve problems or make them look good to other people, and then you watch them walk away because the narcissistic person got what they wanted from that transaction with you, and now they're done because they're done with the transaction. They aren't thinking about you when they leave because they don't care. And your rumination is about what you could have done to have kept them in the relationship, right? You keep ruminating, what could I have done? Maybe I could have been more, maybe I could have been different. There is nothing more you could have done. You already did enough. In fact, I'd argue, you probably did too much. The entitlement of narcissism is that they do expect other people to do what they need, even to sort of fix them, and then the narcissist can waltz off into the sunset on that leg you helped them heal. Adult relationships, no adult relationships, they're not about fixing, they're not about rescuing, at least they shouldn't be. Healthy relationships are about balance and respect and mutual regard and compassion. If during all of that you support each other and sometimes help each other solve problems, then that's great. That's wonderful. That can happen, and that will happen in a healthy relationship. But nobody should believe that the only way to win someone over is if you fix their life. So this proverb, if you heal the leg of a person, do not be surprised if they use it to run away, actually really applies to many narcissistic relationships where people felt they did so much for the narcissistic person, and the narcissistic person took it and walked. The best I can leave you with is stop trying to fix them. It can't be done. It can't be done by me. It can't be done by you. It can't be done. And the fact of the matter is, rescuing and fixing, that's not what love is. Hope that gives you some clarity. Thanks again.